Back Look Cinema, the podcast.
Here we are, born to be kings, with the princess of the universe. Here we belong, fighting to survive in a world with the darkest power. Yeah! And here we are, with the princess of the universe. Here we belong, fighting for survival. We've come to be the rulers of you all. Oh, oh, oh. I am immortal. I have inside me blood of kings. I have no rival. No man can be my equal. Yeah. Take me to the future of you all. Yes, I know how bad that sounds. I know, but I couldn't help it because of the movie that we're covering today. It demands song. It demands joy and celebration. It's the inspiration for why I started this podcast. Thank you for joining me. My name is Zo. It's spelled Z-O or Z-O if you're outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 177th episode of Backlook Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then tell your family, tell your friends, and tell that serious-looking guy over there dressed in a trench coat holding a samurai sword. Yeah, that guy. I'm sure he's not skulking about for nefarious purposes. Tell him about Backlook Cinema. Now, I can't tell you when and where I saw this movie for the first time. I'm pretty sure that I either saw it on cable or I saw it on a VHS tape. I'm pretty sure it's VHS. This is like long before DVDs. So I saw this a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure that I saw the trailer for the movie, but I was unable to see it. So when it finally showed up on television some kind of way, it was fascinating. It was enamoring. It was impactful. It was something that really charged my imagination. I absolutely love this movie from when I saw it as a wee tyke. And the movie I am referring to is, of course, Highlander from 1986. And I'm pretty sure I saw it around that time. I probably saw it in 87 or 88, but man, how much it affected me, how much I enjoyed that movie. So let's get over to the opening credits and talk about the Highlander. Born in 1518 in the Highlands of Scotland, a young man goes to fight for his family and defend his village and is killed in battle. Hours later, he is resurrected and is promptly rejected by his village as unnatural. From there, he roams the world, learning about himself and his true purpose, that he is one of the few immortal beings roaming the world. He learns that he is part of a vast contest. He must fight and kill the other immortals and steal their power. Yes, they are immortal except for one caveat: beheading. Once their heads are separated from their bodies, the power that keeps them alive escapes and is reabsorbed by the nearest immortal being. In this contest, they must kill until there is only one immortal left. In the end, there can be only one. Highlander was released March 7th, 1986. It was produced by Thorn EMI, Screen Entertainment, Davis Panzer Productions, and Highlander Productions Limited. It grossed over $5 million in the US and Canada on a reported budget of $16 million. Now, on the first glance and the second glance and the third glance, that would categorize this film as an absolute flop. And sadly, that's what it turned out to be. So how did this flop turn out to be this incredible phenomenon that spawned multiple sequels? I think an animated series, but I'm pretty sure you've heard about the television series that went on for like 6 or 7 seasons. I couldn't tell you because it wasn't supposed to be this successful after theatrical run, but that's exactly what this movie became. It is the definition of a cult classic. And even when we adjust it for inflation, if it came out today, the budget would have been around $46 million and it would have grossed around $17 million. It's like all around just bad juju. But, you know, it's still enjoyable. And I'll admit it right now, I can recognize some of its flaws, but it doesn't matter. It's like the enjoyment I get out of watching Highlander far exceeds the flaws that this film might have. So talking about the actors who've appeared in this movie, we can start with Christopher Lambert, or it might be pronounced Christopher Lambert. Your preferences may vary. He plays Connor MacLeod, or as he sometimes put it, Connor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. And he has made appearances in Mortal Kombat, the very first live action theatrical that came out in the 90s, I believe. He also has this, I don't hear people talking enough about his very first U.S. theatrical appearance, but that happened to be in the movie Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes. And the thing about that movie was it was a big to-do. I remember when it first came out, the campaign, and remember, this movie came out before Highlander. Greystoke was the movie that actually got Christopher Lambert the role in the Highlander movie. So Greystoke was supposed to be a really big deal. The marketing campaign was off the chain. I remember Marvel had like a 4 to 6 issue limited series, and I have some of those issues. I don't know if I ever got all of those issues, but I have some of those issues. And, was there a Happy Meal? Maybe there was a Happy Meal associated with it. I remember it was a big deal. And, you couldn't help but see the commercials. And I was a fan of Tarzan, of the old Tarzan films that came out in the 1960s. So when I finally got to see this film, I was a little bit disappointed. It wasn't what I thought it was supposed to be. And I was so jazzed about seeing this movie that I actually read, Tarzan of the Apes by Edgar Rice Burroughs as the novel that, of which all the Tarzan movies are based on. And I learned a lot of great things about Tarzan. So one of the things that I learned was that he spoke French before he learned English, which is why in all of the movies, Tarzan speaks broken English because he doesn't know it that well. But he's actually very fluent in French because he was first found by some Frenchmen, which makes sense that the actor that they chose to play in an updated version of Tarzan was a native French speaker, and Christopher Lambert. So yeah, that's great. Christopher also appeared in Beowulf, and there's a movie Fortress. He hasn't had a whole bunch of really high profile, highly impactful films since he's been in Mortal Kombat, but it's joyful to see him. It's joyful to see him, whenever he shows up. Up next is Sean Connery. He plays Juan Chantes Villalobos Ramirez. And you may have seen him in Dr. No as James Bond. He's a lot of people's favorite James Bond. He is the first, I think he's the first theatrical James Bond. I'm pretty sure he was. I think that's why so many people are attached to him as that character. He's also been in The Untouchables. I covered The Untouchables in episode number 72. He was great in that. He's also been in Entrapment and The Rock. Those are all great movies. Sean Connery has habitually chosen some really good roles, and he's also been in some duds, but I really like and enjoy his style of acting. Clancy Brown plays the Kurgan. Interestingly enough, the Kurgan is the people that he comes from. Kurgan are people. It's not his name. And I'm not sure when I found that out. I think I found that out in this viewing. Is when I just watched it, I just found out. I'm learning today that his name isn't Kurgan. That his people are called Kurgan, and so they just call him the Kurgan because they don't know what his name is. I know that in other sources they give him a name, but in this movie he doesn't have one. You may have also seen Mr. Brown in The Shawshank Redemption. We covered that in episode 101. That's one of my favorite movies. He's excellent in that movie. Interestingly enough, the Kurgan is Brown's most evil character, and the character he plays in The Shawshank Redemption is a close second. He's also been in Starship Troopers. I covered that in episode 77. That's one of my most popular episodes. I really enjoyed that movie as well. And he's also in John Wick Chapter 4, which I hadn't watched yet. I need to get back on John Wick. Roxanne Hart plays Brenda Wyatt. You may have seen her in License to Wed, Letters from Iwo Jima, or Oh God, You Devil. And most of her roles are television roles. As a matter of fact, for many of the people that I'm about to read, you will probably know them more from television than from any of their cinematic appearances. So that includes Betsy Edney. She plays Heather. You may have seen her in Save the Cinema, A Day at the Beach, or A Handful of Dust. I haven't heard of those movies. Have you? Up next is Alan North. Actually, he's probably more familiar to film audiences. He plays Lieutenant Frank Moran. He's also been in See No Evil, Hear No Evil, and Lean on Me. I covered that in episode 18. A fantastic movie. And Glory, I covered that in episode number 32. Sheila Gish plays Rachel Ellenstein. You may have seen her in Mansfield Park or Seasick. John Polito, he plays Detective Walter Bedrose. This is someone else that you've probably seen in more as often in the movie as you may have seen him on television. So you may have seen him in Miller's Crossing or The Crow. I covered The Crow in episode 107. Another movie I feel like I can compare The Crow to Highlander and how there's such, they may not have made a bunch of money at the box office, but they're incredible cult classics that failed to give us a proper sequel, but strangely enough have pretty decent TV series behind them. And also, you may have seen him in American Gangster. And finally, Hugh Corshi, he plays Sunda Castigar. And you may have seen him in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, or Nightbreed. Highlander was directed by Russell Mulcahy. He also directed Resident Evil Extinction, a movie called Malone, Swimming Upstream, The Shadow, and Ricochet. I'm not familiar with most of his movies, but I do know about Resident Evil Extinction. I may have seen it. I may not. At some time, I fell off of Resident Evil. I mean, I do enjoy those movies, as goofy as they are, but I don't know which movie that I stopped watching the series. I am familiar with Shadow. Shadow is okay. I know there are a lot of people that actually really enjoy The Shadow. I enjoyed it up to a point. And then Ricochet, which is, I'm debating whether or not to cover Ricochet. I'm not sure exactly how I would feel about it. I'm kind of wishy-washy. It's like, I think I enjoyed the movie and I kind of want to cover it, but I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it has John Lithgow and Denzel Washington. It should be a good experience. And I remember liking it the first time I watched it. So maybe I should give it a shot. It was written by Gregory Wyden, Peter Bellwood, and Larry Ferguson. So Wyden doesn't have a whole bunch of writing credits, although he has contributed to The Prophecy, Backdraft, and something called Other Life. Bellwood similarly doesn't have a huge filmography. He has written a movie called Malevolent, contributed to St. Helens, and there's something else called Phobia. Ferguson, of these three writers, have had the most film credit. So he's written such movies as The Hunt for the Red October, Alien 3, Rollerball, Beverly Hills Cop 2, and the Presidio. Now, as you know, writing movies is a gambit. So a lot of times there are lots of writers that are attached to projects, and they have developed rules in the guilds as to how these movies are credited. So how much or how little each writer is given to any particular movie is, well, you'd have to do some research to find out. And I'm not exactly sure how much each writer contributed to this movie, but somehow they meshed together and they gave us this incredible cult classic. So kudos to all of them. The music is by Michael Kamen and Queen. So Kamen, you may have heard his movies, or you may have heard his music in movies such as What Dreams May Come, The Iron Giant, Frequency, X-Men, Open Range, or Against the Ropes. So his music was very interesting. It was kind of a combination of like a high fantasy theme, some music that you might expect to hear in high fantasy, and like hard rock or some type of rock opera. It's like it's rather clumsily done, but I feel like it's a decent blend of Kamen's high fantasy style and Queen's rock opera style. He works it in there. He gets it done. But what I really wanted to talk about is Queen. Queen really makes this movie. What you heard earlier was a very poorly sung rendition of Princes of the Universe. It's an iconic song. It's a song that's actually used in the TV series, and it's probably used in all of the sequels. It is very iconic. Queen originally intended to record only one song for this movie, but after viewing footage from the movie, they were inspired to write more, and boy did they ever. The band members each had a favorite scene and composed songs specifically for them. Brian May wrote Who Wants to Live Forever during the cab ride home after seeing the movie. He was like, he was impacted. he was on his way home. He's already writing songs. Roger Taylor used the line, "It's a Kind of Magic," as the basis for the end title song. Princes of the Universe was written by Freddie Mercury. 1 Year of Love was written by John Deacon. Hammer to Fall is written by Brian May. Gimme the Prize, Kurgan's theme, also written by Brian May. A Dozen Roses for My Darling is written by Roger Taylor. And New York, New York, it's a cover by Queen that you hear in the movie. And I don't know if it's like legally available anywhere. It's like you can get it as a video on YouTube Music, but it's a song that's kind of hard to get to. And it was at least Queen's version of it. And it was written by John Kander and Fred Ebb. So that's it for the opening credits. And for announcements, nothing much right now. I know I have an upcoming appearance on a podcast called Movie Lovers Unite. That'll come around the end of the month. As always, there's my shop at backlickcinema.com/shop. And you can check out the designs for mugs and t-shirts over there. Also still working on that eBay shop that the eBay shop is actually there. There's just nothing there on sale. It's just like I don't have anything up. But if you want to check it out, it's called Bazaar de Alonzo. You can check out the things that I've sold before on there. You could do that. So that's it for the announcements. Let's check out our favorite parts. So what would the theme of this movie be, or the theme or themes, if any? And I had struggled with this because I'm thinking about this movie and all I can think of is like the action aspect of it. And it's a guy who lives forever and they're fighting other guys and they're cutting off heads and there's a training montage. It's kind of a typical hero's journey. And I was trying to tease out what the themes could be, but then after thinking about it for a minute, it seemed kind of obvious. It's really family and belonging. Like when you watch this movie, the happiest time of Duncan's life, Connor's life. I'm getting it mixed up with the TV show now. The happiest time of Connor's life is like when he's with his family, even when he's going into battle with his cousins. Like he's having the best time. He's betrothed. He's found someone that he wants to marry. It's like a clan that's full of love with each other. They're laughing and joking with each other. And then, they go to war and he's killed, and then he's rejected by his family because it's like, you died. You should not be back alive. And after this rejection, after he's pushed out of his clan, he's kind of roaming the earth trying to find connections again. And then after an undeterminate amount of time, he finds a connection with the woman. He gets married and he starts to build a new life. Later on, he makes a connection with Ramirez and Ramirez trains him and they become like brothers. And fast forward through the centuries, he makes another connection with the little girl and he rescues her during World War II, and he kind of raises her as his own daughter. And she grows older while he stays appearing the same age. And then in quote unquote modern times being in the 1980s, he's in New York City and he still manages to find a way to connect to other people, or at least another woman. So I think that it's like after losing his family, he's basically spending his life trying to rebuild the connection that he lost way back hundreds of years ago when he had his original clan. So I think that that's a very strong theme in this movie. But if you've identified some other themes in this movie, then why don't you leave a comment below if you're watching or listening on YouTube, or hit me up on fanmail@backclickcinema.com on the email and let me know what you thought, if you've identified some other themes or if you think that I've missed something, because that was the one theme that I could find and I can't quite find anything else. So let's chat about what some of our favorite parts were in Highlander. So normally I would try to limit my favorite parts to just 5 of them, because it's the show can go on and on, if you just constantly listing all of the scenes and things that have happened in the movie. And this is one of those movies where I can get in trouble, where I was like, well, there's so many parts. There's so many things. Like when I talk about my favorite parts, it could be anything. It could be the visuals. It could be the special effects. It could be the acting. It could be a particular actor. Usually I narrow it down to scenes, but there are so many things that I could list as my favorite part of this particular movie. And one of my favorite parts is the music. I mean, isn't it obvious, man? The music really, and I'm specifically talking about Queen. I mean, the score is really fun. It's really good. I think I hear hints of this score in someplace else, like not just in this movie, but I feel like I've heard it someplace else. But so I guess there's something familiar about the orchestral part of this music. But Queen's soundtrack is just, or the songs that they wrote for this movie, they wrote and performed, it's just fantastic. It's just, I mean, Who Wants to Live Forever is fantastic. Princes of the Universe is one of my favorite songs ever. And Give Me the Prize is just, it matches the movie absolutely and seamlessly. I will say that Queen understands the assignment when it comes to writing a theme for a movie, or writing a soundtrack for a movie. They just do a good job, right? So, and sometimes doing a good job is all you could ask for. So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite parts. I remember in a previous episode, I had talked about the narration not bothering me, and that was The Dark Crystal. And this movie also begins with the narration also doesn't bother me. And so I don't have any issues with, and especially since this is exploring, a very unique concept not immortality itself, but that this immortality has a contest attached to it. And along with uh, talking about the things that I like about this movie, I want to kind of go into the mythology that this movie explores, a little bit of the world building. So in the movie, you have, and also exploring the world building will explain also why none of the sequels actually worked. I think that the problem is that this story, at least the stories with the immortals, it ends at the end of this movie. So it's kind of hard to continue with the story about immortals after they've won the prize. Like the movie is over, right? The story, the prophecy has been fulfilled. So where do you go from there, right? And that was a problem that they were running into when trying to make sequels to this movie. So I think that is to say that one of my favorite parts is the world building of this movie, the concept of there being immortals. They don't know how or where they come from. They just know that they exist. And they have this urge to kill the other ones of their kind. They're extremely rare, and they go about the world looking for other immortals. And then they get into a fight. One of them is beheaded, and the survivor absorbs the power, becomes more powerful, and continues his quest. The quest is to kill all the other immortals. Along their quest, when they get closer to the time of what's called, is it called the quickening? No, it's called the time of the gathering. There's a specific point in time when all of the immortals, the remaining immortals, will be drawn to a place in a far off land. It happens, that land happens to be America, and specifically New York City. All the immortals will be drawn there at a specific time, and it is at that time they will continue to fight, and the person who kills all the other immortals at that time will receive the prize. And they know what the prize is. Apparently the prize is having all knowledge and the ability to see what other people are thinking, and apparently the ability to influence world events or something of that nature. That is the prize. Also, they get the prize of mortality. Immortals, for whatever reason, are sterile. And so they lose their sterility. They become fertile. So now they can produce young, and they'll eventually die. So that's the prize. So I found all of this fascinating. This whole setup, the whole thing. I like that they don't try to explain everything. They just leave it up to the imagination of the audience. Like, one of the things they don't explain is like how they know all of this. Like, how do you know that there would be a gathering? How do you know that what the prize is? Like, none of this is really explained. It's only, is this a belief or is it real? It's part of their mythology. They don't go through the trouble of explaining all of this. So I think that by not explaining it, it makes the movie more enjoyable. It's like, you don't need to know these things. Just enjoy. There's a guy sword fighting. Enjoy the sword fight. You don't need to know why people's heads are getting cut off. So one of my favorite parts of the movie is the concept. So see, I'm in trouble now. I've already named two of my favorite parts. I like the movie and I like the concept. One of the things that it's not my favorite part. I just want to throw this out there. They don't always do this in all the sword fights, or you don't see it a lot in the TV series. But as they're sword fighting, the swords are shooting off. They're sparking and they're shooting off electricity. There's electricity all around, and in one fantastic fight, there's a fight between the Kurgan and Ramirez, and they're fighting in this stone tower. And somehow, just as they're striking the stone, the tower is like falling apart. And in their fight is so powerful that it's actually causing earthquakes and lightning and a storm. It's it's unbelievable that this sword fight. And you kind of have to wrap your head around it. How is a sword fight so magnificent or so destructive that it's causing the tower to crumble? And what I take it to mean is that, as immortals gain more power, it's like some of that power like kind of seeks out or seeps out, and it just kind of destroys the environment around them as they're fighting. That seems to be the case, at least with Kurgan and Ramirez. They're both so powerful that as they're fighting, they're causing the tower to be destroyed. But you don't see like a parallel. Like you don't really see a parallel with the other immortals that are being fought. You don't see the unwanted destruction of the environment that happens when the immortals fight. So this is one of the things that I wish was a little bit more consistent in the movie. Like sometimes it's just that the swords are sparking, and sometimes it's a stone tower falling down. But it just makes for a very interesting fight. I'm pretty sure that the swords sparking and arcing electricity was inspired by Star Wars. Cause like the first thing I thought of when they clashed with the swords and it causing the sparks, the first thing I thought of was lightsabers. So I'm pretty sure that they, took inspiration from that. I kind of wish that they were more consistent with the electricity arcing. Also seemed to be a very dangerous thing to do, playing with electricity and swords. But I'm not saying that's my favorite part. I'm just noting something that happened in the movie. I'm trying to skirt around naming too many of my favorite parts. Another thing I wanted to note, that there's a line in the movie. So like very early in the movie that you have, well, actually the movie is told in flashbacks. So you have modern day Connor McLeod attending a wrestling match with, I think the Freebirds were wrestling. And then he'll flash back to when he was, well, before he knew that he was immortal, back when he was with his family, and they had their first fight, and they're coming back from the fight or the battle, and coming back from it, one of his cousins remarked that, that he peed his kilt, and, because he was so afraid while he was fighting that he peed his kilt. And from my understanding of how kilts work, how do you pee your kilt? Maybe he was lying down or he fell down or something and he peed his kilt. Maybe it happened that way. But I'm thinking that if you're wearing your kilt correctly, then you won't pee your kilt. Everything will flow, and your kilt should remain dry. That's how I'm imagining it. But that was an interesting thing that happened in the movie. He said he was going to pee his kilt, and I'm wondering, how do you do that? Also, you notice that Connor, although he is fighting, he's not very good at it. He sucks in the 1500s. He sucks at fighting, and it's like he encounters the Kurgan, and the Kurgan kills him almost immediately. so that's kind of problematic. Or maybe he's better, and he just didn't get a chance to. We don't get a chance to see him because nobody wants to fight him, and he's roaming around the battlefield. He's trying to fight the enemies, but they're running away from him. He doesn't understand why, and the reason why is because the Kurgan had told everybody that Connor McLeod was not to be touched. He's going to kill Connor McLeod personally. Somehow the Kurgan knows that Connor McLeod is immortal, and the Kurgan intends to kill and behead Connor McLeod. I don't know how he knows. That's not something they explain. It's just something that happens. It's possible that he had spies or something. Like the only other way that Kurgan would know beforehand, like before the battle, that Connor was immortal is that he had an immortal henchman go to the village and sense that Connor was immortal, and then went back and reported to the Krieger. I got his name. I'm messing up his name. The Kurgan. And you report back to the Kurgan as, yeah, that guy, he's an immortal because I felt the quickening or whatever. Or maybe they were in like a large market, and the Kurgan was like, he wasn't conquering. He was just enjoying himself at the market, and he felt Connor's immortal essence. And instead of killing Connor at that moment, he decided to wait until there was a big battle. It's hard to say why the Kurgan knows that Connor is immortal, but he knows, and it doesn't matter. It's not important. The only thing that matters is that he kills Connor, but Connor's clan attacked the Kurgan before the Kurgan had a chance to behead Connor. And that's when the Kurgan says one of his most famous line, "Another time, MacLeod." I also want to mention that the love story, that's a big flaw. So not the love story like in the beginning, like when he's with in the 1500s, the woman that he was betrothed through, they were already together. So it's not really a love story per se, because they're already together. But then he gets killed, and then she rejects him, and his village rejects him. And so he goes out into the world. He finds another wife. They don't really show how he gets together with this woman, only that they're already in love. And so that's not really a love story, because they're already together. It's just that, they can't have a family, and she actually grows old and die. And so there's that story. And then the real love story that gets this movie in trouble is when Connor is in modern times. He gets together with this police forensics expert, and she specializes in weapons. And it's kind of weird, because there's at one point where, like, after he has this battle and beheads this guy in the parking garage of a stadium, and then at some point, like, she's looking for evidence of what had happened. This is after the fact. And then he follows her to this bar. And then after he follows her to the bar, then he leaves the bar. It's like he's trying to hit on her or something, but she doesn't take the bait or whatever. And then so he leaves the bar, and then she starts following him, I guess because she's suspicious about him or something like that. And then that's when, they're attacked by Kurgan. Connor tells her to run away. And then he screams, talking about, don't ever follow me or whatever. And then later on, he asks for a date. It's weird. It's a weird kind of back and forth between Connor and this forensics police officer. And then later on, Connor reveals to her that he's an immortal, and then he guides her into stabbing him in the chest. And then after he gets stabbed in the chest, and he heals, and he comes back to life, and then they start kissing, because now all of a sudden they're so in love after he proves that he's actually an immortal. Then they kind of break up again. It's a weird story. It doesn't quite, it's not quite logical. There's nothing about this relationship is logical. I know that they could have done a better job of building this love story. Thankfully, you can kind of ignore it, or maybe there was so many stories, like love stories and action movies, that were so contrived that nobody really paid it attention. I certainly didn't pay that much attention to it until when I first watched it. I wasn't really paying all that much of attention to the love story. It was just a contrivance to show a little bit of a modicum of nudity. And there was a lot of that in the 80s. And I would say maybe the 70s and 80s, but definitely the 80s. It was like they needed to contrive a way to show some nudity. And I feel like modern films have kind of gotten away from that. Like nowadays, you don't need a contrivance. You can actually be part of the story. But in the 80s, especially in 80s action movies, they had to finagle a way for there to be some nudity. And sometimes it's way more obvious than at other times. And in this movie, it's way obvious. It's like you're just looking for a way. And the way they did was not the best way. It's not the most well thought out way to figure out how you was going to get some nudity in this film. The fights in this movie are another one of my favorite parts. I'm going back to the favorite parts now. The fights in this movie are fantastic. I really enjoyed them. Probably not the best choreographed sword fights, but they were pretty good. I really enjoyed them. So there was a fight between the Kurgan and Ramirez at the tower. It was fantastical. It was a little bit over the top, maybe a lot over the top. There was a lot going on in that fight, and I had mentioned how they were fighting and the tower was crumbling down. It strikes me as doing a little too much, but regardless, it was still fantastical. It was magical, so to speak. The first sword fight that you see is it's Connor against this other immortal, this dude that's kind of like dressed in a business suit. I forgot what the dude's name was, but the funny thing about that fight is, like, when you watch this fight, this fight will tell you if you're watching the extended version or if you're watching the edited version. And I think only the extended version is available now. So when I originally watched this movie, it was just a kind of a regular sword fight. It was fun. You saw a beheading. You saw the quickening for the first time where Connor gets the power from the dead immortal. And like, when you see that moment in the movie, it's like, oh my God, what am I in for? This is a wild ride. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen, with the, gaining this power from cutting somebody's head off. But in the extended version, the guy that Connor is fighting is doing a bunch of flips. He's flipping around, like, just some weird nonsensical flips that really don't have anything to do with the fight. It was like kind of unnecessary flips. And that is what will tell you that you're watching the extended version. And then later on, there's an added scene, and I'm not sure which one it was. I think it's when Connor meets Natalie as a little girl. Is her name Natalie? I'm drawing a blank. No, not Natalie. It's Rachel. So he has an assistant named Rachel, and he rescued Rachel as a little girl during World War II. And I think that's an added scene, and that it makes sense to put that scene back in the movie, because then because his assistant is an older woman. In appearance, she's older than he is. And as it turns out, he rescued her as a little girl. And what's interesting about that is that it really kind of marks him as it really hammers home the concept of Connor being an immortal, him raising a little girl to adulthood, to basically old age, and while he still physically looks the same. So I think that scene was added. Or maybe it was another scene where he's in a duel and some dude is trying to kill him in a duel, but he keeps coming back to life. I think that might be the added scene. It's one of those two scenes. But on to the other fights. Another fight I like is the Kurgan and Castigar fight. It's funny because in my note, I wrote Kurgan and the jabroni, because I couldn't remember his name at the time. And it do seem like a jabroni, because it seemed like this fight was not hard enough for Kurgan to win, because these are the last immortals. So these are the last most powerful immortals. Presumably they've killed lots of other immortals. So by the time you get to New York City, you're really only fighting the best of the best, because the New York City is the gathering place. You're approaching the time of the gathering. So these fights really should have been harder. And it didn't seem like it was that hard at all for Kurgan to finally defeat, Castigar. And Castigar, he was like the last one before he had to fight Connor McLeod. It was like that was the last obstacle. So that fight should have been more spectacular. But what made the fight interesting, what made this scene interesting, is that you had this Marine with PTSD that's driving around in a sports car with his AR-15, which I believe at the time was illegal to carry on the streets. And was there an assault weapon ban in effect? I'm not exactly sure. But anyways, so this Marine guy has his AR-15, or it could have been an M16. It could have been a fully military rifle, because he had it on full automatic. So he sees this sword fight going around. He decides he needs to do something. So he gets his machine gun out of his car, and he goes over and he starts, like, I think this is after or right around the time, or probably after the Kurgan had decapitated his rival. The Marine guy starts unloading on the Kurgan, just filling his body full of lead. And of course, the Kurgan is immortal. And the Kurgan, he gets a pipe or something, and he stabs, or he gets his sword and he stabs the dude with his sword, and lifts him up with the sword, and they think he throws him to the side because this dude is nothing because Kurgan is immortal, and then the Kurgan starts to experience the quickening where he's getting all of this power that Castigar had collected, and he's absorbing it and becoming more powerful, and there's lightning and it's glowing, and the Kurgan is floating in the air, and the Marine is not dead. Like, he sees all of this, and after he's taken to the hospital, and this is one of the things he has to explain to the police. But yeah, that's that he, like, first he describes what he saw, like the sword fight, and then he tells the police, I know you're not going to believe me, but after the sword fight, after he stabbed me, he there was electricity, and he was glowing, and he was floating in the air. So yeah, that was he got an eyeful interfering with stuff that wasn't his business. Well, why are you just randomly shooting people? That's the other thing. Anyways, I'm sure he was just trying to help, but unfortunately it didn't work out well for him. He should put up the gun. Anyway, so that was, he made his presence at that scene made that fight interesting, because really the sword fight by itself should have been more impactful. And obviously the fight at the end of the movie, the factory, it was fantastic. So Connor has to go and he has to rescue his on again, off again girlfriend from this huge tower sign, and then at the same time fight the Kurgan. And there was a point in which he actually got in a little bit of trouble, and his girlfriend, like after he had freed her, was managed to distract the Kurgan long enough for Connor to get his wits about him, get a sword back. They fight in silhouette, which looks fantastic. I can only say that the fight looks great. It looks fantastic. It's like I can't describe the fight, only to tell you how it made me feel. And it made me feel thrilled and inspired by this fight. And I think the other inspiration of the fight was, like, I think they wanted to be better than Star Wars. It's like, our swords can't glow like the Star Wars swords, so this fight needs to be outstanding. So in the end, Connor is able to take Kurgan's head, and then he's lifted up. He got the lightning. He's being struck by lightning. He's being assailed by spirits and ghosts. He's getting the greatest quickening that any immortal has ever gotten. And this is because it's like he's the last one. He's getting the prize. He got the prize. He's getting all the knowledge and the influence. He's getting all of the power, and he gets mortality. So he's receiving all of this as the one who has won the prize. And the effects for visualizing this is fantastic. It captures the imagination. It's a great blend of fantasy and modernity kind of merging in that one moment. So I also want to back up and mention a couple of other of my favorite parts. One of them, they both feature the Kurgan. So Clancy Brown just being evil and menacing is fantastic. He really embodies his role really well. He's one of the few, very few villains kind of measure up in how menacing they can be. And he really does it spectacularly. So there's one point where, like, the Kurgan is in his hotel, and he's leaving the hotel, and the guy, the desk man who manages the desk, or the hotel manager, I don't know what you call him. Anyway, let's call him the hotel manager. So the hotel manager is at his desk, and this is after the Kurgan has had a visit from a prostitute. I think her name was Candy. And so as he's leaving, the hotel manager's like, so how did you like Candy, huh? How'd you like that, huh? And so the Kurgan turns around and he's like, don't ever speak to me. Just as menacing as he could be. Because he's not, he's not down for that nonsense. It's like, ain't nobody ask for your, curiosity to be satisfied. So yeah, that was fine. And then, again, to highlight the Kurgan's menacing ways, how both he and Connor are in a church. They're on holy grounds. Like, one of the rules that they go by is that the immortals cannot fight on holy ground. Ramirez describes this as a sign of respect or tradition or something like that. And for me, I was really hoping that it was something more of that whatever power or whatever faith, the thing that gives the Highlander their powers is something that actually physically prevents them or magically prevents them from fighting on holy ground. It's at this point where the Kurgan is taunting and kind of taking a dig at Connor McLeod and teasing him, and talks about how he fought Ramirez and how Ramirez, died on his knees. And then he says, I raped his woman before his blood was even cold. And then notice how Connor reacts. He's like, oh, so Ramirez lied. It wasn't his woman. It was your woman. And she never told you. So maybe I gave her something that you lacked and that she secretly longed for my return. Just goading Connor the entire time. That was a fantastic scene. And then, also menacing the nuns and the priests that were there. So just a nasty character. He's really being as nasty as he possibly could. The last favorite part, and I know it just can't be mine. It's got to be other people's. Is the ride in the car. There was a point where the Kurgan had kidnapped Connor's girlfriend, the police forensics specialist, and basically took her on a wild card ride. And they're riding throughout New York City, and the Kurgan is like driving on the wrong side of the streets, speeding, taking his hands off the steering wheel. Like, she's screaming, and then he starts to scream, and he covers his eyes like he's afraid. He's doing all of the things. And so that's fantastic. So just the Kurgan just being evil. Was there a whole lot of character development for the Kurgan? No, not especially. He just wants to be who he is. He's just not trying to gain a greater truth. It's like, we're warned that if he were to gain the prize, the world would be covered in thousands of years of darkness and terror. And because he likes chaos, so he would try to promote more chaos. And so it's not so much that the other immortals are trying to gain power and influence so that they can bring good into the world. They're just trying to prevent evil from taking over the world. Like, Connor isn't trying to become someone with all knowledge. The first thing he's trying to do is trying not to die because he doesn't want to be beheaded. And the second thing that he's trying to do is he's trying to prevent evil from overtaking the world. So those are his two motivations. And the fact that he won the prize and he gains these things, that's kind of like a bonus. And as I mentioned before, the prize is won and Connor is mortal. So that's why the sequels don't work. The first sequels, it's something about that the immortals are actually from another planet. I never liked that. I don't like them minimizing the fantasy aspect of the first movie. And then they brought Ramirez back, and that didn't make any sense. And they don't explain why. It's like, there's a limit to how much you can not explain things. And then Highlander 3 and 4, I think they just kind of ignored what happened in the first movie. And I think it was 4 4 in particular, they just kind of made a copy of the first movie. With Mario Van Peebles, he was basically being the Kurgan. So, that didn't quite work, just being a copy. And strangely enough, like I said before, the Highlander TV series was actually, I really enjoyed it. I think what they did was they somewhat ignored the first movie. I don't know if it was, maybe the first movie was happening before, well, I'm sorry, I'm saying this all wrong. Maybe the TV series was happening before the Kurgan was defeated, before Connor McLeod became the one. But that's a possibility, but I'm not exactly sure. Or maybe it happened after Connor McLeod became the one, and yet there's still more immortals, which means that they're kind of ignoring certain aspects of the film. So that's why the sequels just didn't work, because they're trying to continue the themes of immortals happening, but their immortals keep happening. I think maybe what would have worked if they revealed that immortals came in cycles. So after Connor McLeod, then a new crop of immortals, or a new crop of people will be granted the gift of immortality, and they would start the cycle of immortals again. And then you would have immortals coming around and beheading each other. And then Connor could maybe, like in a sequel, train one of these new immortals so that they could win the prize. And, of course, Connor would die, but then you would have another actor taking over the role of our hero immortal, basically fighting his way and trying to be the new person to get the prize. It probably would have worked that way. And then we would come to understand why they know about the gathering, why they know about the quickening, why they know about these things that happen to immortals, because these things happen in cycles and they're just experiencing things all over and over again. So I think that would have worked. But it's not something, I don't think, that either the sequels or the TV series ever explored. And I'm not sure why the TV series worked. It probably shouldn't have, but it worked for me. And I think it's on Amazon, and I'm tempted to watch it again, but it's kind of hard with all the TV shows and things that are on right now to rewatch old shows. At least it's hard for me. So that's it for our favorite parts. And now we're going to check out the trivia top 10. All right. So here we talk about the trivia, and I think this time I got all of my trivia from IMDb. I did a little bit of outside research, but still primarily IMDb. I hope it's correct. Join me, if you will, as we explore these fun facts. Like this one. All of Sir Sean Connery's scenes had to be filmed in a week due to Connery's schedule. He had a bet with director Russell Mulcahy that they would not finish in 7 days, but Mulcahy won the bet. Connery earned $1 million for his week's work. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good return on this money. What would have been $1 million? I didn't do the whatchamacallit, but that'll be close to, that's probably like 1.9 million or maybe 2 million today. I don't know. I didn't do the thing. Up next, the sword sparking while clashing was accomplished by attaching a wire to each sword that led down to the arms of the actors to a car battery. One was connected to a positive terminal. The other was connected to the negative terminal. So when the swords touch, there was an arc. That sounds dangerous. That sounds really dangerous. I'm surprised that they got away with that. That does not sound safe. After filming the scene where the Kurgan confronts McLeod in the church, Clancy Brown apologized to the priests and nuns there for his character's dialogue, for fear that they had offended them. So, Clancy Brown is a class act. So it was nice of him to offer an apology for something that really wasn't his responsibility. He's just an actor, and he might be improvising a little bit, but it's what the character calls for. It's in the script. And I'm surprised they didn't have actors there instead of having an actual priest and actual nuns. Or maybe they were in the vicinity of the church. Maybe they didn't leave the church. They were just in the corners or whatever while they were shooting the scene. Yeah. Or maybe they weren't even there and he apologized anyway. So that's also a possibility. The opening shot sweeping through the stadium was accomplished using a computerized system that held the camera on 4 wires. This system was invented by the inventor of the Steadicam stabilizing camera system, Garrett Brown. So in the opening shot, or the very beginning, there's a scene where Connor is at a wrestling match. And the shot is like from above. It's from the crowd. It kind of zooms in on the crowd and it zooms in on the wrestlers. And then the camera zooms back again. It looks like a drone shot. And that's what it reminded me of. I was like, this is spectacular. How did they do a scene that was shot by a drone in 1986? Because drones didn't exist. And this is the answer, is because it was invented by Garrett Brown. He used a system of wires, and that's how they did it. And that's fascinating. Christopher Lambert had just barely learned to speak English when he took this role. The only other English-speaking movie that he had been in at this point was Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, in which he spoke only a few words. And I had spoken about this earlier, but it's interesting that his English sounds really good to me in this movie. Like, it doesn't sound like some other people that I've read about, or some of the movies that I saw, people who had just learned English and just don't sound good. Like Dolph Lundgren in Masters of the Universe doesn't sound good in English. His English is not fantastic. It's like he's putting emphasis on the wrong words in a sentence. It sounds weird. And so it's like, it doesn't exactly sound like a foreign accent. It just sounds like somebody, who's just putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong words, and it's kind of distracting. But in this movie, Christopher Lambert, it's fine. I just thought that he had a weird accent, but it doesn't really sound like somebody who's not familiar with English. Clancy Brown almost turned down the role of the Kurgan, which required prosthetics, because he had experienced an allergic reaction to prosthetic glue. Brown had just finished portraying Frankenstein's monster in The Bride from 1985. The production had to be shut down for 3 weeks. His allergies were so severe. So that's messed up. And it reminds me of The Wizard of Oz, the earlier version of Wizard of Oz, the one with Judy Garland, where there were some people who had problems with their prosthetics and stuff. Well, not necessarily with the prosthetic. It was the Tin Man in specifically. Buddy Epson was the original Tin Man, and he almost died because of the metallic paint that they use to decorate the Tin Man in that movie. Up next, according to the director, Mulcahy, when they first shot the scene of the Kurgan bursting through a door to cut the table in half, Clancy Brown instead ran in and cut through the candelabra, nearly decapitating Sir Sean Connery. As a result, Connery stormed off the set. Later, Connery returned and Brown apologized, saying that he was very nervous. Connery joked and said that he should have used his stunt double more. And that's funny. I think what's funny, because it didn't actually happen, was that there was almost an actual decapitation in a movie about decapitations. So I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm glad that everybody was safe. And it kind of goes to show that, you really got to be careful, when you're making these movies. Again, the director, Mulcahy, said that filming The Stag was a nightmare because at the time of filming, all stags had lost their horns. It was decided to glue on antlers. A veterinarian put the animal to sleep. The horns were glued on, and then they had to wait for it to awaken. Once it did, all the deer wanted to do was shake off the antlers. Of course. During filming, the stag ran away and never came back. It was found later, 25 miles away, and without the horns, of course. Some of the stag scene, like when it's standing in water, is National Geographic stock footage, which sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And if you don't remember, the stag scene is the scene where this is one of the flashback scenes, and this is Ramirez teaching Connor about the quickening and how to bring the quickening about. And he's like saying, see the stag and feel its presence, feel the heartbeat, feel the blood rushing, feel its breathing. And then you see Sean breathing rhythmically with the stag, and then Connor can do it too. And so it's like they're joined with, they have a spiritual connection to the stag, and that is a version of the quickening. Kurt Russell was originally cast as Connor McLeod, but pulled out of the project at the insistence of his girlfriend, Goldie Hawn. He instead starred in Big Trouble in Little China from 1986. And I'm glad that he was in Big Trouble in Little China, but I kind of wonder what it would have been like if he was the Highlander. I think it would have been good. Lastly, the opening voiceover by Sean Connery has an echo effect because it was recorded in a bathroom of his Spanish villa, where he had been working with a voice coach in order to perfect his Spanish accent that he used in the movie. Really? He had a Spanish accent? Did he? I didn't hear it. It was played for the producers over the phone, and they approved of it because they could not discern the quality of the recording over the phone. So, yeah, it's that's interesting. I really enjoyed that opening monologue. It kind of gets you into the movie. I guess nowadays you would just mix it so that so that you would get the reverb out of it. And I don't think he recorded it with the reverb on purpose, because you can just add it later. But I guess they called him as like, could you do one more thing for us? Could you do one more thing with the movie? Could you record this? Because this had to have been after he filmed all of his scenes. So they must have asked him for one more favor to record this monologue. So that's it for the trivia. And now let's look at what the critics thought. The critics gave it a 96%. The audience has it at 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb Reviews has it at 7.0 out of 10. Victoria Mather from the Daily Telegraph UK wrote, made with such super style, Highlander does have entertainment value, but this can only be a one-off. And seeing as how none of the sequels has ever worked, she's probably correct. Now, there is supposed to be a Highlander remake, and it stars, or it's set to star, Henry Cavill, and that will be interesting. I wonder what changes that they'll make. I wonder if they intend on cleaning up the mythology a little bit. It'll be an interesting thing to see how they work with this series. I mean, they're never going to have a good sequel, but a good reboot, that's a possibility. Mike Massey from Gone with the Twins wrote, as the climax approaches, the sci-fi fantasy blend tends to bore, struggling to turn sword fighting and an inevitable showdown for an undefined prize into excellence. So, disagree. I don't think it was boring, and I thought the sword fighting was awesome. So, I mean, this is just a plain disagreement. Adam Lowe's from Cineview wrote, Highlander is a visual counterpart to the rock band Queen, who supply a number of songs on the soundtrack. Big, brash, operatic filmmaking of the highest order. You know what? I would tend to agree. And then Paul Atanasio of the Washington Post wrote, it's here, folks. Fancy wipes, expressionistic angles, quick cut, close-ups, stylized backlighting, camera moving in endless illogic. That's a fair assessment. I'll say that. But I think for me, it enhances this movie. It did have a lot of unique swipes. I'll put it that way. They're definitely noticeable, but I think I liked it better than I didn't have a problem with these things. Finally, Highlander is, as of this recording, available on Prime Video. Now, I think that I can finally watch Strange Days. The movie's been playing. Well, it's a movie I've been angling to cover for some time. And I've trying to find a way to watch it has eluded me. Now, I may have found a way. It's a way that some might consider unnatural. So join me next week to find out. If I don't watch Strange Days, it'll be a different movie. But hopefully I can watch it. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter. Please contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. Please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on YouTube, please like or subscribe and leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlick Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from us to you with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.